Welcome to Jazz in the Land, the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra podcast, featuring your host, Daryl Scott.
Welcome to Jazz in the Land, the official CJO podcast. My name is Daryl Scott. In every organization, there's always a person who is important. They don't give off that personality, that vibe. But once you look at everything that they do and you feel what goes on, you realize they're that person. You know, there are different connotations of what you would say, but they are that person. I'm going to talk to that young lady today. She is the managing director of the CJO, the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra. I'm just going to call her Theresa. She can't see me if I bow down, but I would be bowing down to her right now. Theresa, welcome. How are you? What's going on?
Hey, Daryl. Thank you for having me. I am good. How are you?
I'm doing the best I can with what little I got. So here's my first question. As the managing director of this organization, what technically is your role? Or how many hats do you wear as the managing director of the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra?
I wear a lot of hats. Sometimes I get new ones thrown at me day to day, but the big things that I do are I'm in charge of all of our marketing, so social media, our newsletter. I manage our website, all of our print materials, our blog posts. So pretty much if you see something out there with our logo on it, that is something that I have created and posted and shared. Fundraising is another big component of the job in terms of I manage our database and our mailing list. I'm creating campaign materials, which is something that's really important this time of year. If we have any fundraising activities, I work on that, and I assist in grant writing when needed. And then also just overall operations and administration. So I am managing calendars, I am making calendars, watching due dates, whether it's for concert prepping, for our various campaigns, for our meetings, to make sure that things run as smoothly as possible. I'm a bit of a detail freak. And so then again, I manage our archives, our documents, trying to keep everything as organized as possible. I do payroll, I do daily accounting tasks, and pretty much whatever else comes my way. And then on top of that, at concerts, I'm out in the crowd and I try to talk to as many of our audience members and patrons as I can and just be an ambassador to the organization.
So you're like my mom. Whatever I do or say comes from you.
Sure.
How does that translate to the different types of personalities that are in this group? Because I'm sure there are times when you want to say something, and then there are times you have to blow up that person's personality, so to speak, to get them to do something. Are there any tips you can give to people who do the same thing for other organizations or for people in their lives, how you handle things that you would like to pass on first?
Oh, wow, that's a big question. It's a good question. I have to say, I feel like at times I've been gifted with the ability to have the right brain and the left brain work together. And I know that's not always the case. So sometimes it can be challenging working with folks that might be more detail oriented and not have the creative side mindset, and vice versa. So if possible, I try to blend the two and see if I can break it down and make it a little bit more understandable. Sometimes it just takes a lot of nudging. So you might just hear from me over and over again, just because that's kind of just the way to get the word out and maybe hopefully get it done.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to this, fundraising is an optimal part of this organization. What suggestions can you give to us, or can you tell me some of the fundraising strategies that you use to move this organization forward?
Sure. I think a really important thing for any nonprofit or organization that's trying to raise funds is the idea of telling people what you do and what you're passionate about and what your goal is. So our goal is to advance jazz in the region, increase awareness and appreciation. And that's through education, that's through performances. We want to make sure that people know about this art because it's such a broad category that I don't think people always understand what jazz means and all of the various things that it can mean. So talking about maybe how concerts have impacted audience members, how some of our educational programs have impacted the students that have taken part in them. They've been able to interact with professional musicians. A few years ago, we had a teacher from CMSD tell us that he had two students that like never played a note. And then when they had this concert with our musicians, they went up and they did solos and he was just floored. So, those little moments, those make a big impression and a big deal. And people don't always get to hear about them because they just maybe know about like the overall, we do jazz concerts, but it's so much more than that. So really trying to make everything come to life.
I think that's one of the misnomers is that people don't know what this organization does. Like they'll see the series, Terrell, the thing with Hope's Group coming up, the Hoagie Carmichael thing, blah, blah, blah. Bria Schoenfeld, I think was her last name from last year. And that's all they see.
Yeah.
One of the most important parts of this is the educational portion. What can you tell us about the educational component of the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra?
It's a little bit part of that. It's a newer part, I would say, of our focus. From the get-go 40 years ago, it was really about performance. But in the past number of years, we have, started an educational outreach presence, and it has just increased, especially with our recent residency that takes place at the Cleveland Metropolitan School District in their middle schools. So it's a way of bringing jazz and music to the classrooms because our instructors are in the classrooms with music classes in CMSD. There's an opportunity for a student to get perhaps like a grant for the semester to have private lessons and have an instrument available to them. We know how important music is to students in their long-term success. So how can we be involved and how can we make that more powerful and impactful and just a bigger influence in their lives?
I'll call it a three-headed monster, the marketing, fundraising, and the administrative part. Is one, how do you separate each one? How do you go, okay, I'm going to give 8 hours to this. I'm going to give 5 hours to this. I'm going to give 3 hours to this. I'm sure there's a lot of overlapping. And how do you maintain your sanity?
Who says I'm maintaining sanity, Daryl? Let's be honest. But there is a ton of overlap because obviously what we're marketing our concerts, but we're also marketing our fundraising efforts. Mm-hmm. The day-to-day operations needs to happen to make everything run smoothly. There's no special sauce for how the day breaks down. Sometimes it's just a matter of prioritization of what might need to happen sooner to make things work, and maybe like working ahead on scheduling, knowing that this newsletter is going to go out and these posts are going to go out that go along with it. So yeah, I don't have a magic wand to wave, unfortunately.
Okay, here's something that just came to me. So say I am listening to this program, this segment of Jazz in the Land, and I want to become a member, so to speak. I want to be involved. How might I do that? How should I do that?
Be a member of what per se?
Just the organization, so I can find out about the different events, find out about education. I've got a son who plays clarinet, and I want him to get involved. What should we do?
I mean, the big thing and probably the easiest thing is to go to clevelandjazz.org. We are on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on LinkedIn, and those are all linked to our homepage. And if you go to our main website, we do a breakdown of all of the different educational programs that we offer. There are biographies of all of our tenured musicians, and then you can find all of our concert lineups. There's blog posts from the past that talk about artists that have performed with us, as well as past concert programs. And just in the past, we've done some things about whether it's audio equipment recommendations or just a little overview of different genres throughout jazz. So cool jazz, bebop, etc.
Okay. You say you were on this description of your duties. It says you are an ambassador of org concerts and communications with donors and people who attend the events. What do you tell somebody who walks up and goes, I really enjoyed this show. How can I find out about more? How can I get involved? I've got whatever. Um, what are the conversations you're having with those people to get them to continue the relationship?
Sure. I mean, it could be a matter of, having them reach out to me or making sure that I have their contact information to reach out to them. Whether it's just thanking them for coming to a show, inviting them to another show. You can email me at Theresa@clevelandjazz.org. So it's just a matter of, getting to know people is getting to recognize people. I see names on lists all the time. And when I finally get to put a face to a name at a concert, because maybe I happened to overhear somebody saying something or I was introduced, it's so great to finally be able to be like, oh, you're so-and-so. And I know that you've been involved for a really long time. So just really building up those relationships and trying to make everyone feel seen and special and know that we appreciate all that they do for us.
There's this event coming up. It's called Giving Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? Tell us what that's about.
Sure. Giving Tuesday really kind of kicks off the calendar year end of giving for a lot of nonprofits in general. And that is a specific day in general, too, where you'll see a little bit more focus on maybe one specific activity or one specific ask. You'll start seeing a lot of messages from me soon. But that's a dedicated day. And then really, though, it kind of, like I said, starts the whole season. So mid-November through early January for us is what we consider kind of our year-end campaign or our campaign season for this time of year.
What is the, I know because I'm a member. What is the duration of time that we have for like the concerts and things like that? It's because it's not a January to December.
It's not, no.
It is.
We start our year in, technically we start our fiscal year in July and we ended in June. So when we say year end, it's at this point we're talking about calendar year end, but it's not really the end of our true business year. So our season often goes from the fall through the spring. This year we started earlier than normal with our season series by starting in September with Terrell Stafford, whereas in the past we've started maybe closer to November. And then we'll be going into May with Woodstock and Mary Bridget Davis to end our season series. And there are other events along the way. We've performed at the Tri-C Jazz Fest. We performed for weddings. We've performed, we were at Tremont Lincoln Park at the end of August. So there are things peppered throughout the year.
This is a daunting task from the standpoint of time, effort, things that are going on, putting miles on your car, putting miles on yourself. How do you handle that? What are you sleeping 12 hours a day?
It's a lot, but it works. Again, right brain, left brain. So there's always something different to do, and it's not day in, day out of the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. I came from the corporate world, which is a lot different and a lot bigger. So it has been interesting over the past 6 years to work for a nonprofit, but I also love music and have always loved music. So it's been a really good spot for me to end up in and give me the opportunity to learn more about jazz and the history of even just music in the city of Cleveland. So, you do what gets it done.
Well, you still got 40 more years to work before you turn 65. So you got plenty of time.
Well, bless you.
There's this thing, I heard conversations about having the high school kids do a concert, kind of like be I'll say it this way, a day as a part of the Tri-C Jazz Fest kind of situation where they have their own festival. I think that's really a great idea because it gives the kids the exposure of what they need. But my thing is coming from a broadcast perspective, that's the biggest fear in anybody's life of of standing up, sitting down, whatever, and performing, whether it be musically or from a speaking standpoint, in front of people, because they're going to judge. There are going to be, I call them sounds from the audience that can make you turn and run away or whatever. Where does that stand as we're going forward?
So as we're going forward, Jazz Festival is something we really want to launch for at least the high school level. There hasn't been one in the region for a number of years, and
Right.
there's kind of been just a lack of that in the area. So this gives jazz ensembles fewer opportunities to perform and learn and collaborate. So we're hoping to fill this by launching a non-competitive jazz festival, first of all. So we're hoping to minimize some of the pressure so it's not like fear-inducing, but really making this a day dedicated to performance, education, and inspiration for a range of students. From a performance participation, I believe the main audience of the students would be the other students.
Right.
During the day, ensembles would perform a 20 to 30-minute set, but then they would receive clinics with two mentors, so professional musicians, one from the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra, and perhaps one that's a larger known guest artist coming in. So a lot more hands-on experience that they won't get just at their high school. And then they'll just be able to kind of get a better understanding of jazz and the power of collaboration. But the cool thing about this too is that, like, it seems how we want to present it, if we're able to let it take off, is making it really more of a community event. So yes, while all these schools will congregate during the day and perform and listen to each other and create relationships, that evening, the idea is that there will be a concert open to the public. Then the CJO would perform with a guest artist, and the kids that had participated during the day would attend for free. But it would definitely be a larger community opportunity to bring jazz to perhaps a neighborhood that doesn't typically get that kind of entertainment.
That's why I'm glad I just talk. I don't have to stand up in front and try to, because number one, I got no manual dexterity, none whatsoever. And I've asked people, how do you get that, and when did they start? And somebody tells me they started at 4 years old, and I go, that's impossible. But there are musicians out there that you talk to that do that have started at that age. What is the major difference between what you're doing now in this nonprofit world compared to the corporate world? What is the biggest difference you see, or you feel, between the two? Because I'm sure there are people out there in today's environment who maybe want to get out and have less pressure and do the nonprofit or the competitive nature that is needed to do in either world. But at some point, you got to want this.
You do. I mean, I think the biggest eye opener was the sheer size, and I think the proximity to the end product, for lack of a better word. I was in product management. I did work with creative teams and business teams and kind of like the middle, developing strategies. But there were so many other people involved and so many different tiers of overseeing. Whereas, I mean, this is, it's nonprofit, it's music, it's local musicians, and we're small but mighty. So just being right there and being able to make that impact without the extra noise has just been incredible, and being able to really see the finished product without it being heavily edited. But you're right. It's a new set of stressors. I mean, because again, still at the end of the day, you want to create the best product you can. You want to make sure that the organization is sustainable and has a future. So it's just, you just think of it in a different way.
Nice. It's interesting getting your perspective from a kind of behind the scenes look at what goes on. Because I'm sure, like we talked about earlier, people only see the concerts. But then to see the value of getting your child into a music program at school, and that the reward is a a concert performance in front of a bunch of people you don't know.
Yeah.
And hopefully you can achieve that. And then to market those people, whether or not they get a scholarship to the Berklee School of Music or to Juilliard or to Cleveland State or Tri-C, it doesn't matter. But you've given them the opportunity to display their skills, and it gives them the thought process of, this is what I got to do to get better. It's not like, and I can only equate it to athletics. You can play in high school, you can develop your habits, you move on to college, you develop your habits. From college, you go to the pros. And unfortunately, there's not as many pro football players, pro basketball players as there could be musicians, because you could play locally, you could play regionally, you could get lucky and get into someone's touring band. I don't know if you'll know her, a singer named Mesa. Mesa was a student in college. She got a call from Stevie Wonder's people to be in Stevie Wonder's band. She sings on a couple of albums, and Stevie decides to go on a tour. Mesa can't go. Then what do? So there are hiccups along the way, and you get to learn how to deal with that. And Mesa has obviously gone on to a great career, but I'm sure there are other stories out there. And I think the more we publicize those stories, those kids and their successes, I think it will benefit everybody in the long run. Theresa, Mom, I've had a great pleasure of, first of all, knowing you. Second of all, this time we spent together talking about all of this stuff. It becomes an education. I found out some things new, some maybe different ways I can step in and help and be a part of this organization even more. But the biggest thing is to get the music back out there the way it used to be, when, I won't say how long ago, but before, when, and I will say it this way, jazz was never a pop music sort of thing where you've got all this stuff going on. But we had different places in town where there'd be 15, 20 concerts in a summer. We have to somehow get that all back out there and get it going again. And you are an integral part of being the catalyst for those things. Appreciate talking to you. It's been fun.
This has been a delight, Daryl. Thank you so much.
Not a problem. We will have further conversations about some other things, but this is a place to get started, and we will do this more. And at some point, I'll drive down 82 and we'll see each other.
Sounds good.
Theresa, again, thank you very much. Thank you for listening to Jazz in the Land, the original CJO podcast. There will be more after this.
Sponsorships not only make our season possible, but provide much-needed funding for the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra to provide outreach in the community and perpetuate the love of jazz for generations to come. We are so grateful to our presenting media sponsor, IdeaStream, and Jazz NEO for helping our 40th anniversary season come to life. Contact booking at clevelandjazz.org for more information on sponsorship opportunities.
Welcome to Jazz in the Land, the original CJO podcast. I'm Daryl Scott. Sitting here today with I'm going to call you may not agree, but you're a jazz legend. You are. You've been around this game a long time. You've been here a long time. So one of the first things I want to ask you is, how long have you been doing this?
Well, I've been doing this a long time.
Right.
I started on clarinet when I was 6 years old. All right. My dad was my first inspiration. He was a tenor player, played clarinet. And so, I've been involved with the music for a long time, and as everybody should be, I was originally a listener. Right. And I do remember, my dad playing, recording for me, Coleman Hawkins and Roy Eldridge doing Stuffy. I remember I was 3 years old. Anyway, so I remember that stuff, and I listened to all of those recordings. So that was my original involvement. And then I started playing, because I played clarinet. So I started playing in polka bands, because I started getting calls for that.
Right.
And that was like when I was 12. And so that's not exactly jazz, although You know, I try to sneak in whenever I could stuff. And so then I finally got my first saxophone. You might find that odd. When I was 16. Actually, the first saxophone is right there behind you. My uncle's Busher alto, because my mother never wanted me to play saxophone like my father.
Okay.
She never wanted me to be a jazz musician.
Right.
She wanted me to. She thought, you know, if I played clarinet in an orchestra, that was going to be great.
Right.
And it would have been, you know, great, because I do respect that. But that's not what I was feeling. You know, so I got the alto. I remember the first time I played it. You know, actually, there should have been no doubt from the very first, you know, what I should be playing. So, you know, did that, played, you know, in bands around town, started going hanging out. I was hanging out on the east side. The scene when I first came out was quite different than it is now.
Oh, yes.
Right. It was possible. There were jazz was in clubs. If they weren't jazz clubs, they were jazz in clubs being played. I mean, you might think of the Tijuana as a jazz club, but it was just, you know, it was a club where music was in, and that music was jazz, and that was happening all over town. All over town. And it was possible at that time to work 6 nights a week, which all musicians think, really? That's today, you know, nobody could believe that. But it was a possibility then. But jazz was happening because it made money in the clubs. Right. So, you know, they sold drinks and all that. And now, of course, jazz is being run by the nonprofits. Right, yeah. So it's a totally different scene now than it was back then. But I started back then. And my first experience was started playing at the Club 100 and their jam sessions. That was with Eddie Backus. And that was something. And so that was quite a start. And I eventually wound up playing in his band, a regular band. But there was stuff, I mean, around the corner, Lucky Bar, Weasel Parker, and he was one of my early idols. And down the street, the Club 100, was Joe Alexander, and another one of my first inspirations, and a great, great player. And also, there was another tenor player named Dave O'Rourke, who was, good God, what a player. And he was one of my first mentors as well. He and Joe played in groups together, but jazz was kind of like all over the place.
So then, how did you wound up playing in Quincy Jones' band?
That was much later. All right, I was at the end of this long. There was gigs, and years go by. And then the Smiling Dog happens, the Smiling Dog Saloon. Yeah. And that was in 1970. And that was a tremendous experience. At that time, the jazz scene had really dried up. I remember, you know, being, playing on the road with, show bands and, you know, and thinking, God, will I ever play jazz again? You know, it was scary. And then came back to Cleveland, and I played with the Bill Dobbins Kent State Lab Band, and that was a terrific band. And we played Monday nights at Eddie's, and that was quite an outlet, and that was great, you know. And there was jobbing gigs and things like that. But, you know, the scene had changed dramatically. And then the Smiling Dog opened up in 1970. The Smiling Dog Saloon was on West 25th. And it lasted from 1970 to 1975. And every jazz act, touring jazz act, that was active at that time played the Smiling Dog Saloon.
Okay.
It was the place where jazz was played in Cleveland. And I could start to name, it'd be easier to name the bands that didn't play than did play. I mean, let's see, Cannonball, who became a good friend, in the quintet, they played there. Stan Getz played there. Herbie Hancock played there. Alvin Jones played there. Freddie Hubbard played there. Yusef Lateef played there. It was a who's who. And I was part of the opening act for most of those gigs. As a matter of fact, their first gig, jazz gig, it started, the owner was Roger Bond. And the Smiling Dog was a converted bowling alley. So it was just this giant space. It was not much of an ambiance. But you had this space, and a friend of ours, went to Roger Bond and said, you should have music in here. You should have jazz in here. And he said, oh, okay. So it started off, my friend, his name was Bill Belichick, not Bill Belichick, Bob Belichick. And he convinced him that he should have jazz in there. And the first jazz group they brought in was the Weather Report.
Wow.
And we played the Sunday, we opened for them, and the band was me and Bill Dobbins on piano, great player. Tom Baker played bass. Val Kent played drums. Skip Haddon played percussion. And that was quite a band. Anyway, we opened up for them, and the joint sold out. And so Roger Bond, the owner, said, this might work. So we started booking jazz regularly. They were booking all kinds of things, There was a lot of rock, a lot of folk rock. You remember, I don't know if you remember Ellen McWoyne, that kind of thing played there. But it was very exciting. It was going on, and I got a chance to play with a lot of those bands that I said played there, and that was really. I became friends with Cannonball Adderley, and I sat in with him. And I sat with Herbie Hancock and Elvin Jones, and a number of those groups. Anyway, Quincy Jones had just recorded an album called Body Heat, and he wanted to tour. He was going to tour on it, so he's putting together a band. So Quincy, I guess Cannonball and Quincy were tight, and the way Cannonball says it, he asked me, he says, I'm looking for a reed player. I played, soprano and flute at the time. And he said, Ernie Krivda, Smiling Dog Saloon. So that's how I got contacted by Quincy. Now, the first time around, it didn't work out because Quincy had an aneurysm. And he was sick, so there was not happening. But he recovered, and the tour then began in 1975. All right, so he put together this band, and this was, the music was like, it was kind of all-encompassing.
Right.
R&B. You remember this album?
Yes.
It was actually a great
album.
Great album. And it had like a terrific vocalist, everything must change,
That's right.
And then there was, other R&B things, and you had the Johnson brothers were on this gig, and I do remember going there, and we just, like, when I got to LA, I had a hotel room and one car for the band. This is LA, it's all about driving.
Right. Yes.
So, but anyway, I finally got this call. Quincy wants you and Louis Johnson to come, to his house in the studio.
Right.
So, okay. So we went, and this was a long time sitting around doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So we went into the studio, which was in the back of his house, walked through the house. Peggy Lipton was there, all the kids and everything. Went, and there we were in the studio, and he says, play. So, Louis Thunder Thumbs strikes up a groove, and, I played flute, and I was playing flute, and we did that, and Chris, and we, you could jam, and Quincy goes, I knew this would work. And I'll never forget that particular time, that particular thing, because we're sitting there, and who comes over to the house but Milt Jackson? Good. Milt Jackson comes into the house. All right, now Milt, at this time, I'm pretty sure why he was there. He was looking to make some money.
Right.
All right. So, I mean, it might seem odd. He was possibly one of the most successful jazz groups of all time, the Modern Jazz Quartet.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But they weren't making rock and roll money.
Right.
All right. So I think he was, looking for Quincy to
help me out, give me a break.
Yeah, hook me up here. Anyway, they were going on, and me and Luz were sitting there, drinking, punch or something, and these guys were talking, and they were just going on and on about this and that, and I learned that Quincy just had no respect for the Beatles whatsoever, and they don't know nothing about no changes, nothing, They weren't jazz musicians.
So let me ask you this. This time, you're still relatively young.
Yes, well, I was 30.
So when this is all happening and you're playing with some heavy hitters, how are you feeling? Are you comfortable? Are you nervous?
All right. I actually felt that I belonged. I was 30 years at this time, 30 years old. I played a lot of gigs.
Right.
All right. There was things happening, in Cleveland. Like I said, there were a lot of heavy hitters there.
Right.
I mean, I consider Eddie Bax to be like a heavy hitter.
Yeah.
All right. And I consider Bill Dobbins to be a heavy hitter. And history has borne me out. But there's no question that the band was loaded. The horn section, Frank Rossellino was playing trombone. Sahib Sahab, one of the most underrated saxophone player, he was playing baritone. And Bill Lamb was playing lead trumpet. And Ramon, I can't think of his last name, he was Hispanic, was playing jazz trumpet, played just like Clifford Brown. All right, so you have that, and the road manager and sometimes bass player was Ray Brown. And you had Donnie Grusin on piano. Now, Don was Dave's brother.
His brother, right.
All right. Now, I used to kid him all the time because, Dave was very famous.
Yes.
All right, so, I said, can you call up your brother and see if he can loan us some money here? That kind of thing. Anyway, I got to tell you about the first gathering of the band. All right, so you had jazz guys and you had R&B guys. I said, well, we're in this room, what should we play? And somebody says, let's play Killer Joe.
Oh.
Okay. Da da dee, da da da. So this is going on, and so that's what was going on. Da da dee, da da da. What wasn't going on was ba ba. There was no bridge,
right?
And so this was going on for like a long time. And I think it was he that stopped. He said, "Wait a minute." He said, "Are we ever going to get to the bridge?" And from that time on, the jazz guys lost all respect for the R&B guys. 'twas the way it was.
Right.
And then on top of that, there were singers. You know, there was Joe Green, and there was, and he brought in, there were cats from Rufus. Remember Rufus?
Shaka Khan.
All right. Instead of the Shaka Khan, there was, her replacement in
I think Valerie Simpson's in there.
this wasn't Valerie.
No?
No, this was, damn. Anyway, so you had that singer, you had Joe Green, and there was a French-Canadian chick named, I'm not very good at names. But anyway, she had like a great range, and I do remember because she brought her husband along on the trip, and all the cats didn't dig that at all. So anyways, so that was a band. It was quite a good band. We had like 3 guitars. Wah Wah Watson played one of the guitars. Al Shiner from Rufus played the other guitar. The other Johnson brother,
Lewis.
No, Lewis was a bass player.
Yeah.
So anyway, there was a collection of guitar players, and so we played music from the album, and we played Detroit, we played New York, we played Washington, and we played Denver. And then we went on a tour of Japan, which we played for a month. And band was sounding good. And the opening act for us in Japan was the great R&B band. Lenny Pickett played saxophone. Do you remember that band? Anyway, they were sure. Anyway, so that was quite a trip, you know. But after, hello, what was the band that opened for us in Japan?
Power
Power of Tower.
Yeah.
Right. They're a very impressive band, and they had that drummer and that band is just tremendous. And, Lenny was, he had more tails, he was dancing, and quite a player. Anyway, so that was Japan. We played all over Japan. And we played some towns that were, I hate to say backward, but we had to go to fly prop planes to get there.
Better man than me.
Yeah, well, it was, And so at the time I'm carrying a tenor case, I'm carrying a soprano case and a flute case, and every place we landed, it was 100 miles from where we were going to be.
Right.
But we had to walk there. Anyway, so that was some of the rigors, The other thing was the lack of sleep. Because Quincy was of the school, you could get the first flight out,
Mm-hmm.
because we were playing the next night. So we got back to the room and drank Sapporo beer to try to get ourselves tired. And eventually we fall asleep. Then we were up at some ungodly hour in the morning. Jumped on the plane, go up, sound check, gig, and did the whole thing again and again and again. But that's just the rigors of the road. That's not a new thing. And so that ended, and I came back, and the Smiling Dog was still open, still doing, and I got a chance. I had been the opening act, but because I went with Quincy, Roger Bond thought, okay, you can headline. The headline is a week. So I put a band together of Kenny Warner on piano, Abe Laboriel on bass. All right. Skip Haddon played drums.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And there we go. So I had been cultivating all these original tunes at the club for those 5 years that I was there. So that was what we played. And I had made tape, and so it was a plan. I had a plan. I was going to go to New York and try to get, it was a dream of mine to be a recording artist.
Right.
That is big with me. And so I made a lot of money with Quincy. Couldn't nearly spend it all. So I saved up a lot of money. So I was going to take my money, take my ill-gotten gains, and go to New York and try to get a recording contract. Well, when I first got there, I was, going around, and it was, no, we can't do that now. And all right. So I kept at it, and finally, Irv Kratka, Inner City Records, said, yeah, let's do this. So can we put out the tape? He said, let's just put out this tape. Because Irv was among the most frugal people on the face of the earth.
Okay.
All right. So I said, I'd like to do some more orchestration. And so I'd like to record this again and add things. And he said, yeah. So he was impressed by the tunes, He was impressed by me as a composer, So Downtown Sound. We went into Downtown, and I got Bob Moses. I'd been hanging around with, so he played drums. Gil Goldstein played piano. Jeff Berlin was on bass, and Ray Montilla played percussion. And so we played, and the results are in 3 recordings two recordings I did in New York there. There was Satanic, which I hate that name. That was Irv's. The Alchemist, and then I did a recording here called The Glory Strut. And, but we played almost completely my originals, and was getting, a lot of, really great critical acclaim. They'd be writing about me, so I'm going, But I could not it became obvious that I was not going to be making any kind of living trying to lead bands in clubs in New York.
Right.
That was not going to be happening. So, it's like, okay, it's not happening. So it dawned on me later. So I'm getting this press, and this is all over the country. And I said, why I should be able to, get something somehow. So it occurred to me, I can come back to Cleveland. And if you look at Cleveland, look at the geography of Cleveland, what's around? What's around us? We have Detroit to the north. We have Buffalo and Pittsburgh east. We have Columbus and Cincinnati to the south. We have Toledo and Chicago. Right. To the west, Chicago being a little farther. But and that's 5 hours. But all these other places are 3 hours. So, but it band together, and I could use that as like, and that happened. That actually happened until I got, had these health issues. I was still running around playing that circuit.
You can preserve and protect the great musical heritage of Cleveland by supporting Cleveland Jazz Orchestra's mission to increase awareness and appreciation of jazz by engaging the community with original music and exceptional performances and inspirational educational programming. Go to clevelandjazz.org and click Donate today.
Welcome back to Jazz in the Land, the official CJO podcast, as we continue the conversation with Ernie Krivda. You had a long, prosperous career.
Well, I had a long career.
I'll say prosperous, because I think it's prosperous.
So what is your fondest memory of all that time, of all that music, of all those people, of all the information that was given to you?
Okay, well, there were things after, mostly I had played with small bands. We went around, played, and then I in the early 90s, I had the opportunity, I formed the Fat Tuesday Big Band.
Yes.
All right, and that was a big deal. It was a hell of a band, hell of a band, and I had a lot of great players, many of whom were my students formerly. But that was a great experience. I played all these different rooms, in these, played like Andy's in Chicago, the Dirty Dog in Grosse Pointe in Michigan. All right, and what was they called it? The joint in Pittsburgh that great drummer played. But I played with a lot of great musicians, and I remember the musicians. They made a lot of my stuff possible. And we were looking at ESPN, not ESPN, YouTube, and I got a lot of my stuff on YouTube, and there's just this montage of me playing with all these different people, just terrific players, and so here I am. I made 34 recordings, all these albums, playing with all these great players, being able to record, which was always my dream, and doing it for a considerable length of time. I'm 80 now, and I can't travel anymore. But I do remember what I did, and I'm grateful to God for the ability to do that. It was a hell of a run.
That Fat Tuesday Big Band was a great band. I saw it a couple of times when I was a little younger. But you couldn't, when you took a break, the band took a break, that's when I took my break. Because I didn't want to miss anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was one of those things, I wanted to hear every note, hear everything that you guys did. You also did a lot of teaching. You had many students.
Yes.
What was the main thing that you wanted to teach them when they were in front of you and they had questions?
How to be a jazz professional. And I decided pretty early on that the only way to do that was to, they had to play gigs. So we rehearsed during the week, and then I would get a gig for us to play.
Right.
First of all, it was the Barking Spider, and then after many years, unfortunately, that was a great place to do that. Then we played Christopher's, which is on the east side, and so the guys were. So when we had rehearsals, it wasn't just a rehearsal, just to, run through stuff and get it together. It was to get it together for what? And that for what was the gigs. And so I had a lot of students, who, developed, on those gigs. So many of them I have students that are out there playing now. But a lot of students have recordings out of their own, which is very gratifying. But I know that a lot of that has to do with the fact that they had to play tunes, had to be swinging, and had to have some kind of connection with the blues. And And on these gigs, there was something where people could tip the band.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so if they didn't, sometimes they say, we didn't make a lot of money this week. I said, well, you know, you got to make them tip you.
Right.
You got to play terrific.
Mm-hmm.
So then they'll, you know, the better you play, the more that tin can will get full. And actually, that was not lost on them. They got out of that really, really good. Yeah. So it was the Tri-C program.
Yes.
Right. Scott was in the Tri-C program. So was Dominic Farinacci.
Yes.
So was Curtis Taylor, who was teaching at Iowa now.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful trumpet player. He's got albums out. I was just watching Dean Hewlett playing with us on bass, and Steve Ranko is playing the drums. These guys are really, really good players.
Mm-hmm.
And I could go on. A young man is playing guitar with me now, Brett Hamper, and drummers playing with me, Ricky Exton. They all played in the jazz workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a big deal for me. Truly.
You have a lot of things to be proud of. There's a wonderful reputation that you have for the music that you play. There's a wonderful reputation of the students you taught. There's a wonderful reputation of people following the example you set from a business standpoint. Does that make you feel good?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Sure. Yeah, it is. It's very fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
Very fulfilling to see young musicians develop.
Right.
You know, under your tutelage.
Yes.
You know, and seeing your ideas about jazz education.
Right.
Be fruitful. Jazz education, has always been. I learned on the bandstand. I learned from musicians who were more experienced than me, and an example of early jazz education. But I was with the Dorsey Band.
Mm-hmm.
Out of high school. Chuck Finley got me the gig. He was in the band. Great trumpet player. Lee Castle was leader of the band.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a lot from Castle. We didn't necessarily get along. Totally unknown to me was Tommy Dorsey hated bebop players. Lee Castle idolized Tommy Dorsey.
Right.
All right. That's understandable, but I didn't know that he shared that total disdain for bebop players.
Mm-hmm.
And I considered myself to be a bebop player, and that's what I did. So we were playing Indian Summer. Sure, it starts off with bo da ba be bo da. It's a great tune, all right. But I was, a young bebopper, and so I got this little spot to do. So I'm going. So he says, I want you to play the melody. So I said, oh man. Oh, okay. Do it again. I said, I'm not going to play the melody. I'm a bebop guy. So he says, I asked you to play the melody. And so that happened again. And he said, if you do that again, I'm going to fine you $50. No, I'm making $125 a week.
Right.
So $50 is, so anyway, next time it calls out the tune, doo-da, Do-dee, do-dee, bum-bum. So anyway, that was my first experience with jazz education.
Mm-hmm.
You were in a business,
Right.
And it's important to make the leader happy, and the leader does understand what is going to make him money. And there was so much to learn.
Right.
At that particular time, that band, played repertoire. The repertoire was of the Dorsey Band, and people wanted to hear Indian Summer played like Indian Summer.
Right. Yeah.
And so, nobody's that interested, in my bebop improvisations,
Right.
right from the go
Mm-hmm.
on Indian Summer. So, anyway, that was my experience with jazz education. It was also playing, with all these great players, that were older than me. Eddie Backus, used to sit in with Joe Alexander. Now that was an education.
Mm-hmm.
And Weasel Parker, Go Here Dave O'Rourke. And a lot of it had to do with listening. I was always listening, to and at that particular time, you had the opportunity to listen to great players. Cleveland in those days, great players playing live.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so you could go hear Ace Carter,
Mm-hmm.
all right, play piano, or Bill Gidney, great player, or I could say Skeets Russ, but I could also say another great player piano. There's Bud Wilds. There was like piano players by the score.
Right.
And then there was great trumpet players. You would hear the Rick Kiefer band, and Dave O'Rourke and Weasel played in that sax section. And on a couple of the numbers, they would do chase choruses. They got my attention, because they just played the hell out of that stuff. And Rick Kiefer was a great trumpet player,
Mm-hmm.
great trumpet player. He passed away a couple of years ago. In that band, there was Jiggs Wiggum on trombone, Al Javorky on trombone, Mel Wanzo from the Basie band was on bass trombone. The trumpet section was Bobby Finley, who was Chuck's older brother, who went on to become a great LA guy. And you had Gary Barone, an absolute prodigy. He was 18 in the band. He was playing his ass off, and then you had Ismail Ali on lead. And that was what a great trumpet player that was. I played with a lot of bands with Ismail playing lead. So the opportunity, that was my jazz education.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I took that which was central to what I was learning and how I was learning, and I tried to pass that on.
Right.
All right. Now, to be completely honest, I had an opportunity to do that at Tri-C.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I would have the opportunity to do that, in other schools.
Ernie, I want to close with this. There is a sense of history with you. I think, and I'll talk to the man who's in charge, Scott, to see if we can set up a series where there's a conversation, where you can take this knowledge of playing, of doing the education and doing everything, and let it be known to people. Because I think that's the other thing that we need. We need the educational piece, but all kinds of folks need to hear it. I'll make the suggestion now because I know Ray can cut it out. This needs to be 2 parts. Yeah. Okay. And we can do that. We don't need to come back again. I think we have enough information here where you talk about the education. You talk about all the great players you've played with. You've talked about your journey. This is history. This is a book. And I think more people need to read the book than just listen.
My wife agrees with you.
I mean, she's a great lady. Let's do that. So, Ernie, thank you very much.
Well, thank
We
you.
will come back and do this in another form or another process. But I greatly appreciate the time. I greatly appreciate the education. And you're listening to Jazz in the Land, the CJO podcast.
This has been Jazz in the Land, the CJO podcast on behalf of the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra. Thanks so much to our board and staff and audience and supporters, and especially to the crew that makes this podcast possible, including host Daryl Scott, producers Scott Marsh and George Carr, and associate producer Ricky Exton. Thanks again for your time, and we look forward to sharing jazz with you in the future.